And it all comes down to this, our last two teams in the grand finals. What's on, guys? Jay Hoyt back with you today. Welcome back to Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. We're playing some ranked play. I believe it's on Fortress in this one. We have a pretty good game for you, like I said, in the background. But we are back here. Major number 3. We're heading to town. Not me, but we're heading to Texas with the Call of Duty League to the Optic Texas Major, the third one of the year. And oh boy, am I excited. So, in order to get to the bracket, we had to have the qualifiers as we do every single predictions. Let's take a look at it. Team standings for the major, major number 3, that is. Looks a little bit interesting. I'm not gonna lie to you. Looks very interesting where Optic, Toronto, Atlanta, and LA Thieves are all 3-2, while Seattle and Boston are number 1 and 2 teams, and we almost had the Vegas Legion in the winners bracket. So let's break it down just a little bit here. Seattle Surge, Boston Breach, both 4-1. Toronto Ultra, Atlanta FaZe, LA Thieves, New York Subliners, and Optic Texas, that's 3rd through 7th place, all at 3-2. The LA Guerrillas run out the winner's side of the bracket, 8th place at 2-3. The Vegas Legion and London Royal Ravens, 9th and 10th, both at 2-3. Florida Mutineers, 1-4, and Minnesota Rocker in 12th at 0-5. Now, Minnesota has not done well recently. Florida, the roster changes, I don't think are actually helping. And Vegas is just kind of there, along with London. So, not that I think Minnesota deserves to be there, especially given the talent on their team compared to some other these teams. But, hey, they almost made winners bracket. Like, they were very close. I think it was down to the wire. LA Guerrillas and Vegas, they're both down to the wire of almost getting into the winners bracket. So okay, so we have our teams, we have them in order here in the qualifiers, but that translates into the bracket as you can see on your screen. Let's start off with the winners bracket as usual. Seattle Surge versus the Los Angeles Guerrillas. Guerrillas, I just don't feel like they have it, especially with even with their old team and their new team. I just feel like the talent isn't there. Seattle, they got first place for a reason. Pred, Sib, 2 of the best players in the world, and, followed by Mac and accuracy, even though Mac's been kind of struggling a little bit recently, and accuracy's always been kind of like meh. But I think Seattle comes away with this one. Again, usually I try to guess the games, but with some of these maps, and especially how some of these, these series play out, it's so hard to predict. So, I mean, you could throw a 3-1. Like, you could throw any of these series on any result possible, and very rarely would you be surprised. So, let's go with like a 3-0 with this one. Seattle Surge moves on. Next matchup, we have an absolute banger. And I mean a banger of a first-round matchup in the winners bracket. Atlanta FaZe versus the Los Angeles Thieves. And this one's kind of hard to tell. They're 2 of our best teams in the league. Both teams finished 3-2. FaZe coming off a loss versus Optic. LA Thieves have kind of been there all year. Do you want to call it an upset? I guess if you're talking about seeding-wise, it would be. But we're going to predict the Los Angeles Thieves in this one. We got to go game 5. These teams are way too good to give us anything less than that. LA Thieves move on to the second round. FaZe drops down. That definitely won't be the last we see of the FaZe side. Third matchup, Boston Breach versus Optic Texas. I'm not going away from them. We're at wrong side. I always do it. Back there, Optic Texas, even though it's an Optic Gaming jersey, doesn't matter. Optic Texas walking away with the victory. Boston, I mean like a 3-0, 3-1-ish. I don't really know. Obviously, like I said earlier, it's so hard to tell. Optic moves on. Breach drop down. Last matchup of the winners bracket. Toronto Ultra versus the New York Subliners. Subliners, you know, they've definitely shown some promise this year, which was kind of strange because on paper, they don't look to be that great of a team. But somehow they're making it work. So, hey, no, we're going to have you predicted to lose in this one. But still, they seem to be like a good team. But Toronto, I feel like, is just a step ahead. Toronto onto the second round. Subliners down to the losers bracket. We got to jump down there, eliminate some teams here. So, in order for our predictions to keep going, you know, in this order, we have the LA Guerrillas versus the Vegas Legion. I mean, they're 8th, 9th teams. I mean, what possibly could you do other than call it an upset? Vegas Legion. We're going to predict them to beat Los Angeles Guerrillas and move on to the second round. Call it game 5. Call it a 3-0. I don't really care. Vegas moves on. Second matchup, FaZe versus Rocker. I mean, one of our best teams versus one of the worst currently. FaZe moves on. I'm going to say 3-0. It definitely could be a game 5. You know, Rocker definitely could show up and surprise us all. You know, although we know they're a better team than 0-5. They definitely, you know, I don't want to say deserve to be up there, but they definitely didn't come out on their good side of this set of qualifiers. But FaZe moves on. In this case, LA Guerrillas and Rocker go home. Next matchup, we have the Boston Breach versus the London Royal Ravens. Again, London, I just don't feel like they have the talent enough to compete with the top teams. Boston, although I don't consider them a great team, I think they still are better than London. They finished 4-1, so obviously they're good enough to be there. I feel like they're good enough to make it on to the second round to face off against the winner of our next matchup, the New York Subliners versus the Florida Mutineers. Mutineers, another team that I just don't feel like has the talent. Like, who even is on that team anymore? It's what, Havoc? Is it Capsule, like Fellow, and who even is their last player? I don't even remember. And Brack is their fourth player. I almost forgot. But again, I just don't feel like that team is good enough to really compete with anything above like 8th place. And you know, their roster changes going into the offseason, you know, just were very questionable. The team they came into the year was very questionable. Now they have, you know, a team that I don't know how they're happy with. But they're going to drop out here. Subliners are going to move on. Down to our, is it final 8 already? I'm not really sure. Seattle Surge, jumping back up to the winners bracket. This is Seattle Surge versus the Los Angeles Guerrillas. Should be a pretty good matchup, but we're going to predict the defending world champs, LA Thieves, to move on to the winners bracket final, and Surge drop down. Next matchup, Optic Texas versus the Toronto Ultra, a matchup that we've seen a lot. And I feel like both these teams have brought on a rookie in hopes to build some consistency around their other star players, right? Hixie's a guy on Toronto that isn't expected to be a superstar, isn't expected to drop big numbers, but kind of fills a role that they needed almost to allow the guys around him to showcase their skill, to be those superstar players. And I feel like that's the same situation as Optic, where instead of going out and trying to trade for an Arcides or, you know, trying to get a star player back on this squad, they pick up Ghosty from challengers in hopes that the pressure isn't on there as a superstar player, and just have 4 superstar players, and someone's stats are gonna, you know, drop a little bit. But now I feel like Ghosty is that player that isn't expected to drop big numbers, when you have Dashy, Shotzi, and Hook around you. So I'm not sure how it's going to work. I was only able to watch, bits and pieces of some of the matches from Major 3. They're on my watch later. I still have to watch them all the way through. But we're going to predict Optic Texas to walk away with this one. I feel like they've had the better luck recently. It's a 3 versus 7 seed, if you will. But Optic moves on to the winners finals for a long-awaited rematch versus the LA Thieves. Dropping down to the elimination bracket, we got to catch up with 2 rounds here. Starting with round 2, Vegas Legion versus Atlanta FaZe. I don't think this one's going to be hard at all. 3-0, move on. Second matchup, Breach versus Subliners. We have Subliners. I guess if you want to call it an upset, we have them winning and moving on to face off against the Seattle Surge, which is our next matchup. Surge, I mean, they're up there for a reason. Subliners, they've been a good team, but I feel like Seattle is just stronger right currently. So we're going to pick Seattle to move on to the Final Four. And we have another banger of a matchup. I feel like if you get Atlanta, LA Thieves, Optic, Toronto, even like New York, Seattle, Boston, like those almost like top 7 teams. And even if you want to throw Minnesota Rocker in there instead of like LA Gorillas, like if you like swap those, that's a really good top 8. Like if you really look at it, and you have a really good, probably like top 4, top 5. So, I mean, the amount of talent in this league is pretty incredible. The amount of competitive games we have is crazy. But Toronto Ultra versus Atlanta FaZe. Ultra, you've been good, but I feel it always comes down to how can you bet against one of the teams that has proven time and time again that they are a serious contender every single matchup. Right, I think it was a stat, what was it, last event or something, they said that Simp has been to 27 grand finals, and what was it, like 24 out of 27 grand finals he's been in, or something like that, and they won like a good portion of those or something. Like, I don't remember the stat exactly, but like, he's good. He has a good team around him. They have the right pieces in place. And I feel like they're going to win this one against Toronto. Should be a good matchup, similar to the LA Thieves FaZe series. Game 5, we definitely deserve it. But we move on to our Final Four. LA Thieves versus Optic in the winners finals. The elimination bracket, round 4. FaZe versus Surge. Let's get down to the Final 3. FaZe, we just talked about them. They're so good. Seattle, they've been doing well this split, if you will, with Major 3 qualifiers, but FaZe is a different animal, especially on a Sunday, especially when you have a stat line that was something like what I said with 24 out of 27 grand final appearances. He knows how to win. That team knows how to win, and it's hard to bet against them. It truly is. FaZe moves on to elimination bracket final against the loser of our next matchup, LA Thieves versus Optic Texas. Of course, this is where, throughout the actual predictions, we're going biasy. Optic Texas are going to lose. Now, I wanted to hype it up a little bit, but right now, Optic is in a weird spot where they just beat FaZe. Was it 3-0 or was it 3-1 or was it game? I don't even remember. It was in that game 4. I was right. I had to look it up quick. They won 3-1 against FaZe. Like, what else could you possibly want other than 2 teams that just absolutely battle every single time you see them? We're obviously going to pick Optic in this one. We're going to pick them to go against LA Thieves again in the grand final. And then who knows? Like, I want Optic to win every single matchup, every single game, every single series, 3 every single team. Obviously, it's not realistic, but for the most part, we have our predictions. I mean, obviously, LA Thieves, Atlanta, Optic, pick any one of those 3 teams, and they're probably going to be in the Final Four and all have a really good chance of winning. And then kind of whoever's doing hot, like a Seattle Surge, like a New York Subliners, like a Toronto. Like, you could throw a lot of different teams up there and still have a banger of a championship Saturday. But Call them what they want. Predictions, a little bit of biasy. Gotta have it just a little bit. But that's gonna do it for today's video. If you did enjoy, hit that like button down below if you haven't yet. Or if you're brand new here, make sure to subscribe. Turn those post notifications on so you never miss an upload. And don't forget, you can always change your mind later. With all that being said, guys, we'll see you in the next one.